Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Uh, I'm Advocate Aditya Asgaukar. I'm moderating today's session, and it's a great pleasure for me to invite and have all of you all here. Thank you so much for turning out and this great turnout. Before we move on to the main highlight for which everyone is here, if I may just request our Vice President of the CTC, Mr. C.A. Vijay Bhatt, to give a few opening remarks.
Thank you, Aditya. Very well. Welcome to everyone, all the dear students of the Chamber of Tax Consultants, and even those who are not member students of the Chamber of Tax Consultants. Firstly, let me heartily welcome Shri Vikram Nankani, our senior advocate today for our session. Thank you, sir, for sparing your valuable time for our students and enlightening us also. And we all have unanimously decided that today all of us will be students listening to you. That is the first thing. To start with about the chamber, I have been told that there are CA students who are not members of CA students members category of the Chamber of Tax Consultant. Let me update you or inform you about the Chamber of Tax Consultant. Chamber of Tax Consultant established in 1926, comprising of chartered accountants, advocates, and other tax practitioners. This association makes contribution on various aspects relating to our profession of mainly on taxation, whether it is direct tax, indirect tax, or international taxation. So far as you students are concerned, we are having number of activities throughout the year, like one what we are having today is Udaan, which is a regular event which gives enlightening by the leading professionals in our world. Also, students' activities comprising of moot courts, debate competitions, essay competitions, and various other competitions. We also organize industrial visits for the students. We also encourage students to be participant in various activities of the chamber. So I appeal to all the students who are present over here. If you are not member, be a member as soon as possible to get advantage of the various activities of the chamber. When you become full-fledged member, you come across many professionals also and attend many other events of the chamber at concession rate, and being member, some of the events are free of cost also. Without taking much of the time between you and the learned speaker, I hand over the proceedings to Niyati, the chairperson of this August committee. Over to you, Niyati.
Thank you, Vijay sir. Good evening, friends. I'm Advocate Niyati Mankar, Chairperson of the Student Committee of the Chamber of Tax Consultants. A warm welcome to all of you to our 5th episode of Udaan with Senior Advocate Mr. Vikram Nankani. It is because of the immense enthusiasm and support from all of you that the Student Committee is achieving greater success each year. As Mr. Vijay Bhatt has already enlightened you all on the various programs that we are going to be organizing in the coming year, I also request each and every one of you who have not taken membership to take membership of the chamber, and also to subscribe to our chamber's social media handles so that you all keep getting timely updates on our programs. We are also in the process of organizing a certificate course on income tax, and also going to be announcing a workshop on key compliances under the Companies Act and Beginner's Guide to Corporate Laws. All those interested, please look out for our events. Also, I would like to point out one unique aspect of the chamber, that it brings together persons belonging to different professions under one roof. Thus, apart from academic and knowledge dissemination benefits, chamber provides you with an opportunity to network with persons belonging to different profession as well. With that, friends, for today's session, the aim and object of holding these Udaan episodes is to motivate students with success stories and words of wisdom of stalwarts of our profession. With that, I wish you all good luck and I hope you have an enriching experience. Over to you, Aditya.
Our guest for today evening, Vikram Nankani, sir. Good evening. The Vice President, the Chair, and the co-committee members, and all the people who are in attendance. I have been given the unenviable task of introducing Vikram sir, as I call him. So I'll be referring to him as Vikram sir throughout the evening. We had decided to put together a formal introduction, but then, the chairman and I had a little bit of conversation, and we decided that coming out with an introduction for sir is, sir already has an unenviable reputation here, especially in tax circles. Though sir has now so much more than just someone who is related to tax. Vikram sir has a wide breadth of subjects on which he has an absolute command on. He has had an unenviable success story, as we can see, because he is associated with so many things, with so many different forums, with so many different subjects and topics, even today, that I am personally awestruck by him. A disclaimer right at the start: I am Sir's junior. I sit in his office, and he never ceases to amaze me every single day. Sir has started out his career in the chambers of a senior advocate. So I know a lot of people aspire to do that. So, the background mix that Sir will enlighten on us today, I'm sure everyone has heard of his background in being a part of a very leading tax firm, a very leading law firm. And then, of course, his decision to, after designation, to put up counsel practice and being extremely successful at that also. He is someone who has managed to straddle a lot of different fields. The subjects that we see him in every day in the high courts and in the other courts and even in the tribunals, I never personally cease to be awestruck by the sheer breadth of his knowledge. He can, he maybe before the NCLT talking about company law, and then right out there when the occasion requires it, he will bring out a provision of Transfer of Property Act or some Negotiable Instrument Act. Personally, for me, whenever I see stalwarts like Sir argue, it reminds me of something I had heard before. That a lawyer is like a magician. The best lawyers are like a magician. They can pull a rabbit out of a hat whenever they require to, and it is honestly a sight to behold. Sir, without wasting more time, I would like to request you to shed some sort of insight on the very basic question of all of them: why law? I think a lot of students nowadays, even after doing the 5-year course, still question their choices as far as corporate law, litigation, etc. But then, sir, what inspired you to take up law? If you could just enlighten us on that.
Thank you, Aditya, and thank you to the Chamber of Tax Consultants for having me. Would love to interact and share my thoughts, especially with the young generation. So 4 decades back, when I decided to do law, you must remember that was a period where, at least within the most typical conventional family, if the child had nothing better to do, you were asked to do law. That was the scenario. I mean, people would goad their children to either become a doctor or an engineer, or at best, something in that direction. But law was the last recourse. To me, it came naturally because I was, my family background, my father is a lawyer, and so is the rest of my extended family into law. So it was a kind of a natural, organic progression as far as I was concerned. And I was clear from day one that I had to do law. Of course, there was a brief momentary period when I got carried away by the theater. And by theater, I mean not the cinema, but the actual theater. And at one point of time, I was even a host on a show on All India Radio. I remember those were the pre-FM days, and Doordarshan and Akashvani were the 2 means of media and communication. So there was a brief period where I nearly got swayed away by that. But other than that, I realized that the real theatrics are in court and not on radio or on stage. And that's why I chose to do law. Of course, my other passion also nearly came in the way of my being a lawyer. I was a lecturer in Jain College. Soon after I graduated, I was offered a post of a lecturer. And I did teach in Jain College economics. That was also something which was at the back of my mind, that if I could take to teaching as a full-time career. But eventually, the inspiration that I got from my father, that I think was the decisive factor into why I chose law.
Thank you, sir. Incidentally, I also recently saw a speech by the Honorable Chief Justice of India, where he also said that he also was a part of some All India radio program for a while. So that is a parallel, and I think a lot of extremely enlightened counsels have eminent counsels have had lecturing also done in the start, though I think that was more with respect to law school. So but economics in Jain College and law, that is something that I personally am hearing for the first time. So I'm sure I don't know whether anyone's asked this question before, because I think most people are afraid to ask, because they know the sort of industry that goes into, preparing a full day's worth of work, because, boards are extremely heavy. But so how does a typical day in your life look like? Because we know that you're not always necessarily in Bombay. Sometimes you travel. You're very often in Delhi, in the Supreme Court, in the NCLAT, Delhi High Court, different high courts across the country. Is there something like a typical day in your life, sir?
Well, every day is a new day, that's for sure. And you apply what you learn in the law school to yourself every day. That is, you live to fight another day. That is one magic mantra which you're taught in the law school. And I think if you apply it to your day, then there's no 2 days which are the same. Having said that, I think it's a very personalized question, because ultimately it depends on how the individual manages his time. That's the critical part. Because there are 24 hours for you, there are 24 hours for me. God has not made any special day for anybody else. He's given us that one constraint, that we have 24 hours. So it's all about time management. Personally, I may be a morning person, but that's not the only right thing to do. There may be somebody who may be a late night person. He may prefer to work late night. I personally prefer to work early in the morning. But the common thread is that there is no substitute to hard work. You are in a profession where reading is a must. Exam is every day. It's not like in a school or a college where at the end of the term or end of the year, you can just mug or cram something and go and scribble out on a piece of paper. Here, every day when the case is listed, you do tend to look at the papers, you do tend to look at the finer aspects. And believe me, each time you read the papers in the same case, you will invariably come out with something new and a different. At least a nuance, if not a completely new argument, but at least a new nuance to the argument. And that, I think, is critical. So in a day when you are preparing, and again, there is no fixed formula that you have to work for 12 hours a day or 16 hours a day. It is each individual's personality, which he has to then mold it in a manner that he makes the most effective use of time. And hence, every typical day is driven by how you manage your time given the different priorities. You may have 5 matters a day or 4 matters a day or 6 matters a day. The point is, you should decide for yourself which is the one which deserves priority and how much time will you allocate to each matter. And I think that is key. That planning is key. So each day the plan will vary, and each day you have to have a typical timetable to make the most effective use of time.
So, sir, message to the audience would be that a lot of hard work all throughout the day, even on the days.
I don't know whether we can say hard work, because sometimes hard work is a negative expression. It puts off some people by saying, "Oh, I have to work hard." I think it's all about how you enjoy your day, and whatever you do, you must do it with passion. If early in the morning you get up and you don't have that fire in your belly, then you are at the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, you then certainly need to rethink: what I'm doing is right, or what I'm doing is not right? That should be the factor, the driving force. If you have the passion to do what you want to, then believe me, whatever you do, you will do it with finesse, you will do it with ease and seamlessly. And therefore, it's not about hard work. It's about the quality of time that you spend on a matter. Sometimes you will, believe me, I don't even read the matter thinking it will not start today and it will not reach. And lo and behold, that is the matter which is called out and is taken up, and the judge refuses to adjourn. But over a period of time, because of experience, you will learn how to manage yourself on your feet, because whatever you do, you're doing it with passion. You're not tired of doing it. The day you get tired, howsoever young you are, you may be young or you may be 70 plus. The day you get tired, I think that's the time to quit.
Sir, I'm sure that the passion still shows even when you speak about it right now. So, but if we can just go back to the start, I would like to ask you about your days as a junior, if you don't mind. In your days when you joined the bar, we've all read the article that you had posted online as a letter of dedication towards your senior. It is one of the few things that gave us an insight into how it was. But can you tell us about your juniorship days, sir, how it was to work with your senior, some anecdotes or something, because we'd really love to hear about that.
So, apart from the inspiration that I received from my father, there were two other persons who molded my professional instincts, and they were my real gurus in that sense. One was Mr. Ashok Desai, the senior counsel. He was both the Attorney General and the Solicitor General, or if I may put it in the reverse order, he was first the Solicitor General and then became the Attorney General of India. Another was Mr. Anand Bhatt, a senior partner in Wadia Gandhi. And I looked up to both of them as being my true mentors and godfathers. With Ashok Bhai, I unfortunately had a shorter stint compared to other juniors that were there in his chamber. I joined his chamber somewhere in middle of 1986. And I think end of 1989 or beginning of 1990, he was appointed as a Solicitor General under Mr. VP Singh's government in Delhi. So he had to move to Delhi. But whatever time I spent with him, each moment was a piece of gem, and I nurtured everything. There were a few things, golden rules that he taught me, and I think they hold true even today and would apply to every junior who enters this profession. And if you've read my article, I had put down some of the principles in that article. But just for those who have not read it, like he said to me, that you are impersonal to the client and impersonal to the case. You have a duty to the court and you have a duty to your profession and your inner instincts. So whether you win a case or you lose a case, you are agnostic to this whole conclusion or the result. What matters or should matter to you that you've done your best. And to quote his words, he would say that, if you win a case, you don't pop a champagne. And similarly, if you lose a case, you don't get into mourning. You just move on. You go to the next case. And life will, unfold the way it should. He also said that, don't have any insecurity. As a professional, we find that irrespective of whether you're a lawyer or into any other profession, many of us have a lot of insecurity of what we are doing and what others are doing. We are more worried about what others are doing. My colleague, my peer, my competitor, what is he doing? And I think I learned that lesson from him, that look at your plate. If that has enough to eat, don't bother about what the other person has in his plate and what is he eating and how much is he eating. So you just focus on what you have on hand and do the best for what you have on hand. That was his second, principle that he taught us. The third was the ability to switch on and off. I never saw Ashok Bhai getting rattled either in court or in personal life. Never. I never saw him get angry, upset, or he had the ability to switch on and off like an electrical switch. If he was out of court, he would forget about the matters. And he had variety of interests. He could read for A for astronomy to Z for zoology. He had the depth of discussing any subject. He was a follower of Buddhism, so he practiced Buddhism in his real life by always practicing and preaching the principles on which Buddhism was founded. He was multi-talented. He could listen to Western classical music, or he could listen to Indian classical, Bhimsen Joshi, and while he would be doing a conference with you. Many a times the client would nudge me and they would say, did sir understand, or was he just nodding his head to Bhimsen Joshi? And then I would say, don't worry, relax. And then the next track would be a Beethoven's track or a Mozart's track, and he would be equally involved in that while he is discussing and say, okay, bring this AIR. This is the most important judgment. That's the kind of the maturity that he had, and he really was a marvelous person at that. So there were many things that I've learned from Ashok Bhai in his short period. It was my loss that I could not be associated with him for a longer period. Of course, whenever I went to Delhi, I always interacted with him and made good my loss, which I had otherwise spent lesser time with him in Bombay.
Thank you, sir. But sir, we hear a lot about how juniors join chambers and have to learn from their seniors. There are certain habits. I mean, this is the at least the myth at the Bombay Bar, that compared to the rest of the cities, a lot of time we spend a longer duration in our senior chambers usually than they do in other cities. And we have noticed that juniors usually pick up cues from their seniors about how to stand, how to argue, even the flourishes, or how to prepare for a brief. So did any of that happen to you? Because I see a lot of people out here, I'm maybe being a bit presumptuous, but the flourishes of a senior very often reflect on the junior. I'm sure you may have noticed that too, sir.
I can't comment on that. It is others who see me would probably tell me whether I have picked up something. But I think Ashok Bhai was unique in many ways. His mannerisms, his court craft, his advocacy. I remember that one anecdote, if I may share with you, is that on the morning of the matter, we were before the division bench of Justice Sujata Manohar and Justice Shugla. And on the morning of the matter, remember, these were days where there was no internet, there was no online research tools or mechanisms available. And instructing attorney came up and said that, he has found a judgment of the Supreme Court which is dead against us. And that judgment had been delivered a week before. But as I said, we didn't have SCC online, or for that matter, any other such digital tools. So when we saw the judgment, we all said, this is over, the game is over. When the matter was called out, predictably, the other side flashed that judgment to the court and said, well, before my learned friend begins, let me tell you that there is a recent judgment of the Supreme Court and the case is over as against him. And Ashok Bhai sprang on his feet and he said, oh, I'm so glad that Mr. So-and-so has cited this judgment. This is the same judgment I was going to cite because it supports me. And that sort of put the other side off guard and said, he was wondering which part of the judgment, which para in the judgment is going to help him, because he had only read the first para and the last para, and he was overconfident that this judgment would help him. And the moment Ashok Bhai said that, the bench told the opponent that, okay, mister, we will look at that judgment after we have finished hearing the petitioner. By the time Ashok Bhai started and he addressed the bench, he had completely swayed away the bench with his arguments. Those arguments we probably may not have been able to make if the court had simply asked the other side, okay, give us a copy of the judgment, let us do a shortcut. And so Ashok Bhai avoided that shortcut. He got his foot into the door, and that's how then the case went in our favor later on. And that judgment was distinguished.
And that sounds like the rabbit from the hat, sir, in a magician's repertoire, if you don't mind me saying. But sir,
yeah,
sorry.
No, I wouldn't disagree with you.
Thank you, sir. But you have had the most unconventional journey as far as senior advocates in Bombay are concerned. Very few lawyers go down the firm, the law firm route, be someone so established, so named in such a large law firm, and then, go to counsel practice. I know a lot of today's guests, a lot of students must be wondering whether counsel practice, whether individual practice, whether law firm practice. And so we are lucky enough to have you with us, who has worn all the three hats, if I may say so. So how do how are youngsters of today? What should they expect when they join a law firm? How did that come about, sir? The entire law firm route. How does the law firm grow? A lot of today's attendees may want to start one today, and they may be inspired by because you joined very early, and so the entire growth story. How exactly does it work, sir?
So I was fortunate that I joined the bar in Bombay at the time when it was called Bombay and not Mumbai. But I was fortunate that at that time when I entered the profession, there was this institution of junior counsels and junior advocates who were given a lot of importance, and they played a very vital role in every litigation matter. But let me talk of it generally. It's not just about litigation. It's about being a good lawyer. And I think there is no one formula or one size fits all. Each one has to decide for himself or herself as to what is the right thing to do. As I said, what should be the guiding principle? The guiding principle is what you like, what you want to do. It's not about just arguing in court. Law is not just about in courts because there are important transactions. There are deals which are done. There are people working in a law firm who are very competent and equally efficient as compared to a counsel who argues the matter in court. And both have their own thrills. I mean, as a counsel, the moment you're able to turn the judge and you're able to turn the thought process of the judge, imagine a judge who's initially against you, and with your arguments, you're able to communicate and convince. What is arguments about? It's about communication, is how effectively you are able to address the issue to the other side. And this applies to a friend, it applies to a spouse, it applies to any relationship, and not just a judge and a counsel. Because when a judge is hearing a counsel, it's all about communication and how effective you are in communicating your thoughts and convincing the other person to agree with your thoughts. It's all about that. This same thing applies when you're in a negotiating table and doing a commercial deal. And so therefore, lawyers who are involved in transactions, in corporate work, are equally good and equally efficient. And it's ultimately all about how you perceive yourself to be. I mean, do you perceive yourself to be a good negotiator? You should be working on a transaction. You should conclude a deal. So be it. You are a good lawyer. And similarly, you will be a good lawyer if you study your matter, master your facts, and marshal the law correctly. You will be a good counsel. So I think ultimately it is the person concerned who decides. Now, I was, in a sense, as I said, going back, I entered the profession with a very clear mind that I want to be a counsel. I was, in fact, in Vadia Gandhi, and Anand Bhatt, who I said was my mentor, and I always remember him. God bless him. We lost him in 2611, but he rationalized with me a lot and said, "Why don't you stick on in the firm and continue to be in the firm?" Had I chosen that path, I don't know where I would have been. But all said and done, just like Mr. Anand Bhatt, there were so many others in so many other law firms who have been a success story. And they have been successful on the sheer strength of doing transactions like conveyances, joint ventures, collaborations. And that is also cutting edge work, and they have succeeded. So it really depends on what the youngster of today wants to do. There is glamour on both sides. I mean, I often hear that, oh no, there's glamour even only on the corporate side. But I think that's a mistake. That's a myth. There is glamour on both sides. And you will find that there are some reverse cases of migration. So you had an excellent counsel like Zia Modi. She started a law firm, and everybody knows what a success story that has been. You had Anand Desai, who was a junior of another senior counsel, Mr. G.I. Mehta. And then he went on to start his law firm. And today you know that what is that success story also. So there are cases where people have switched over from one role to another, and they have been successful in both the roles that they played. And that's something which I saw happening, even though I entered as a counsel. And then when I realized that there is some merit in becoming part of a larger organization, I joined ELP. Of course, it was started 1 year prior to my joining. So I joined a year later than the others, rest of them had started. But there again, while I was part of a larger team, I had cut out the role for myself very clearly. I knew that I was going to do litigation and nothing else but litigation. So what emerges is that your clarity of thought. You should be clear about a career path that you want to. Again, at the risk of repetition, whatever you choose to do, if you don't like it, if you don't love what you're doing, then it's time to change over. So when I joined the law firm also, I focused only on litigation. And naturally, of course, when I became a senior counsel and I chose to become a senior counsel, and because of regulatory restrictions in India, a senior counsel cannot be a partner in the law firm, I chose to step out, and then the rest is history. As a counsel, I have been doing everything. You may call me a jack of all and a master of none, but that's that. And that's again something that I learned from Ashok Desai, because he said, don't depend on one subject, one client, and one forum. These three things he told me. That's not to take away the credit from those who are specialists, and maybe we should talk about them also. There is nothing wrong in being a specialist, and I think it's again your calling as to what you want to do. You could be a specialist and yet have overall knowledge of the law, at least the fundamentals, the first principles. So let's take, for example, you could be a specialist in admiralty law, you could be an expert in income tax, you could be an expert in labor law, which fields in India are a standalone field by themselves. But those lawyers who are good lawyers in their respective area of specialization would also have great knowledge of the fundamental laws, which is, for example, contract law, and for example, Evidence Act. These are laws which are universal in application, whether you specialize in income tax or you specialize in labor laws. You, somewhere or the other, will make good use of the overall knowledge that you have on various laws. So being a specialist, it doesn't mean that you should not know other laws. I think that's the myth. That's some misgiving which many people have. All the stalwarts who are specialized, and there are very many senior counsels who are specialized in specialized subjects and areas, their knowledge of other laws, of first principles, is so wide and so respectful that that is the reason for their success in a specialized field.
So we've covered quite a bit of ground in this conversation. So I will ask you questions piecemeal on all of them. But I also wanted to know about the transition, when you were in ELP, when you were doing litigation there, and now as a counsel, did it feel like a natural extension? Did it feel very different, new challenges? How was the transition, sir? Because, as directly interacting with clients out here, because we have a mix of audiences out here also. There are some chartered accountants, there are some lawyers, and a lot of them who aspire to be CAs, lawyers, etc. in tax and otherwise. Was the world very different? Was the transition seamless? Were there any challenges, or was it because you had already planned it out, as you said, that this is what you wanted to do? Was it something that you had planned out and therefore it was seamless?
So in every relationship, I suppose there is going to be a give and take. It is axiomatic. I mean, without giving and taking, no relationship survives. And the same applies to you as a partner in a law firm. There are added responsibilities, there's no doubt, because when you have a team of 100+ people working with you, you in a sense carry the responsibility of ensuring that each one of them, has relevance in the firm. They have enough work to cater to, and they are kept busy, and their skills are tested, and the maximum potential is whatever their potential is, that we are able to tap. As a partner in a law firm, there will be time which you have to take out for things other than lawyering. One is your lawyering, and which happens in the court, and which happens during court hours. In those days, it was 11 to 5, now it's 10:30 to 4:30. But that's your lawyering time. How do you then use the rest of the time for firm related activities and firm related obligations as a partner? Is again something that you need to, because knowledge building is part of it, man management is a part of it, and how do you ensure that they are having enough work to keep themselves busy. All those aspects as a partner you have to. So there is an element of extra, should I say, function or a role over and above what you're doing as a lawyer. But then it's all part of the fun and games. I mean, every minute that I spent in the firm, I enjoyed it. Really, that time was also, a very sweet period of my career. I enjoyed every moment of it, and there was a lot to learn from that also. So therefore, when today a professional who enters the profession is deciding whether he should be solo, standalone, or whether he should have his own law firm, whether he should act as a counsel, or whether he should be part of a larger organization, a larger firm. I think in each of these, if you understand the role that you are required to play, and then you discharge that role faithfully and sincerely, I think you can't make a mistake in whatever choice you make.
So would you be surprised knowing that we have two audience questions right now, and both of them are, how do I set up a successful tax practice as a lawyer? But one of them, in fact, is a second-year law student, and the second one hasn't told the background. And I think, this goes to the specialization as well as the generalization thing that you had already said. I think, everyone, people who are interested in tax and those who are not interested in tax are two very diverse sort of people. But we are here obviously as members of the name of the organization, Chamber of Tax Consultants. So, how exactly does one get into tax practice? So you have a formidable reputation, especially in the field of, sir, if you don't mind me saying, indirect tax in all its elements, not just one. And now you do so much more. You do arbitrations, you do company law, you do FEMA. I mean, that all is there. But sir, how does one start? In fact, one person's actually gone ahead and asked, if I want to get into tax litigation, should I be doing some certification course or something? It is, I think these questions.
Yeah. Let me divide this into two parts, one with reference to tax and one generally. So I think the question, and I think you read out to me, was very heavily loaded, because it says, how do I have a successful tax practice? You should drop the word successful, because success will follow. It's not a condition precedent for you to set it up. If you start with this burden on your head that I have to start a successful practice, it will never be successful. So just leave that baggage, and you do what is basic and fundamentally right, and success will follow. This is a common guideline for whether it is tax practice or any other general type of a practice. As to how do you focus on tax practice? Of course, knowledge building is a very important part of the exercise. Unfortunately, one area where the lawyers community is not getting that training from time to time is, unlike this chartered accountants, we don't have those points, or what you call it as CPA. And I think it's very important to introduce that concept in law, because you need to update yourself with laws. With so many laws coming in, with so many judgments coming in, by interpreting the law, existing law, that you have to keep pace with day-to-day development. Now, unfortunately, lawyers are barred from soliciting work. So you can't put an ad like in America that I'm the best tax lawyer in the country, or you can't go around putting in Google ads and saying that for all tax solutions, please contact so and so. That's not permissible under the Bar Council rules. So it is by sheer word of mouth and by sheer performance. And let me tell you, I had received in the earlier part of my career a lot of cases in court itself when people saw me arguing a matter. And as soon as I would finish the arguments and come out, somebody would come up to me and say, can I have your name and number, etc. Please, I have a matter coming up next week. Will you do that matter for me? I want to brief you in that matter. So it was sheer performance, and performance speaks for itself. You may then ask me the question, but how do I get the first break? I mean, if you are telling me that performance is what will spread by word of mouth and that's how you will get it, but how do I get my first break? The first break that you can get is wherever you are, in whichever capacity today you are working, in a law firm or as a junior, or you are just interacting with somebody, do not be afraid to make a point. I think when I see youngsters and I find that they are enthusiastic in making a point to me, or whether in court, outside court, whether in my chambers, outside my chambers, even when I'm traveling, I think one aspect that you must remember is that make your point, even if you're not sure about whether right or wrong. As you know, one English lawyer said it, and one of the very eminent solicitors told me that as a lawyer, be sure of the point you're making. You may be right or you may be wrong, but make that point confidently. Don't worry about whether you're right or wrong. And I think somewhere where you will make a point, you will catch the attention. And the moment you catch attention of somebody, you have to seize that opportunity like anybody else. Opportunity doesn't come twice, whether you're a businessman or whether you're a professional. You have to seize of every opportunity that comes your way. And that will be the starting point of where life will take you ahead and success will follow. Otherwise, success by itself has no meaning. It's a very relative term. How will you define success? If you make more money, is that successful? If you do more cases, is that successful? If you make a new point of law and you succeed on a point on which there is no Supreme Court judgment, is that successful? So I think success is a wrong guiding factor. You got to just make a point and make your presence felt. You have to stand out. There is always room at the top. And that's true of Mount Everest. Okay. When you are at the base, there are few. When you're right at the bottom, it's a pyramidal society and a pyramidal structure. There is a lot of crowd on the ground level. There will be some little crowd at the base camp, and then there will be no crowd at the top. And you got to see how you will make that impact to whosoever you're talking, whether you're a potential client or a colleague or a senior. If you make that impact, if you catch that attention, you are bound to be noticed. And that is the beginning of a long journey ahead of you.
So you may have noticed that I'm, wetting my lips a lot because I'm nervous about this next question, which you perhaps have already preempted a bit. You said that when you started out, there was something called junior counsels, and there are a lot of people who still want to be junior counsels, and the question is whether there is anything left, whether junior counsel, because law firms nowadays have developed tremendous in-house capacity to litigate on their own. They, especially with national law schools, etc., coming in, talent is flowing in pretty much all over. And obviously, times have changed. Some parts are still, of course, especially here in the Bombay High Court, we are still very traditional here in Mumbai. But so, slightly loaded question. What about junior counsels? For those like me or those like us who are joining. And this question is especially pertinent because, sir, if you don't mind me saying, when I look around your chamber, a lot of us are first generation lawyers. And I think that is very, that is a matter of great inspiration for us to see you all. So, sir, junior counsels, do you think that if someone is to join the bar in a couple of years, are we seeing junior counsels going out? Like, because I believe in Delhi, junior counsels, the institution doesn't really exist. People do their own matters, file till they get enough seniority, get notice, and then the counsel briefs come in around the time of designation. If you could just assist us with that.
I think, you should remember what President Roosevelt said. The only thing to fear is the fear itself. If you are going to be burdened by the fear that junior counsels as an institution or as a class by themselves are under a threat of being extinct, then I think you will lose your bearing and you will not be able to move your feet. Please remember one thing, that a junior counsel has that edge over a counsel or a potential or a good lawyer sitting in a law firm if that junior is going to be in the court and in the forum, whether it is NCLT, whether it is SAT, whether it is excise tribunal, or whether it is the ITAT. If you're going to be every day in court, you have that extra edge in knowing the pulse of the judge. And remember, whatever work you do on the desk, you may be doing excellent drafting, you may be doing excellent research, you may come up with the best of judgments in support of your proposition. But if you don't know the pulse of the judge, you don't know anything. All that is waste. And who has that extra advantage? It is that junior counsel who accompanies his junior day in and day out to the court. I can tell you, as of yesterday, there was a heavy matter and we were before a division bench in the Delhi High Court. That same matter in the month of May went on for 2 weeks before a division bench. After vacation, the bench changed and it came up for the first time before a new bench. And I was for the respondent. When the other side started, it was a appeal under Section 37 of the Arbitration Act against an order of a single judge upholding the award under Section 34. And when the appellant started, the judge very customarily asked, how long? And the senior counsel, my opponent, said, this matter went on for 2 weeks before the earlier bench. So I think nothing less than 2 weeks. He said it very pompously and told the judge without knowing the pulse of the judge. You know what the judge told him? Mister, if you're not brief, no relief. Be brief, you will get relief. Now, the judge was trying to be poetic, but the pulse of the judge is very important. If you start by, you are going to derail the judge and he's going to be completely switched off and he's not going to relate to what you're saying if you scare him with the thought of 2 weeks. That's the individual judge. So, and again, this is something that you learn from the experience of other senior counsels and also the experience over appearing in different forums before different judges. As they say, that you can always lose a client and you can lose a case, but you can't lose the judge. You can't lose the court. You have to carry the judge with you. That's very important. A junior counsel is an asset for him when he is appearing in court day and night. So your day will come. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to draw any simile or a metaphor, but it's a saying, and you will pardon me for using this proverb, which says that every dog has his day. So don't get diffident. Don't get disappointed. Or as they say in Hindi, "Mera number aayega." So you will get your glory under the sun. Just stick around. Don't be diffident.
Thank you for such kind words of encouragement, sir. I'm sure all those who want to take up litigation and counsel practice will take much heart from it. But while we have you, going back to you, We also have a question here, and that ties in very neatly with my next question, sir. You handle such a wide variety of matters, such a wide breadth of matters. And as you said, the ability to switch on, switch off is very important. So, how do you prepare for such wide variety of matters every day? The breadth of subjects that may be there, such different points, and I can vouch for the fact that so we know that whenever a brief comes in our hands, which has already passed through your desk, everything is underlined, everything is marked. So everything is done. So how do you go around preparing for a brief? How in such a variety of subjects, is there any new thing that you do beyond just the books? Or do the first principles come to your rescue, as you said?
So you should remember two things. One is that you got to master your facts. That's very, very important. You should know the facts and the law will fall into its place. That's the second part. The law will automatically fall in its place. The second is that whenever you get a matter, you reread the same law having regard to the facts that you have studied. You may find that you have read Section 6 of the Income Tax Act or 9 of the Income Tax Act, and I'm using that as an example because the majority here would be familiar with those provisions. You might have read them in your college, you might have read them while doing your internship, you would have read them umpteenth number of times. But I have found that once you have mastered your facts correctly, then when you reread the same Section 9, you will get a new magical point out of it. And that is very, very key to this. So what I do, I always keep the bare act with me. I don't rely much on commentary to begin with, never. Because if you look at the commentary, though that commentary is a general commentary, it is given as a general message, or the author is just giving a general the interpretation of that dehoards the facts that you are. And in every case, the facts are so very important that a single fact can differentiate one case from another. Now, why I emphasize a lot on facts is because once you know your facts, you know which is your best point and which is your weakest point. Once you know what is your best point, then obviously what applies in life applies to law. That is, you must always put your best foot forward. Because when you put your best foot forward, you have sort of already threatened the other side that there is a very serious potential of checkmating him. Ultimately, it is again about a game of chess. You make one move, the other side makes one move. What happens to most of us as human beings, and this is not a criticism, this is the reality of life, we tend to start identifying ourselves with our client and start sympathizing with our client. So we only think the way our client wants us to think, and we get one-track mind. I remember I was invited by a foreign university to give a lecture on one of the topics on Indian law. And I was chatting with the professor during the course of that session. And he said, we have one very good exercise that is, and I believe some of the law schools in India have started adopting that you ask a person to write a proposition or write a paper for the proposition. And you also ask the same person to write against the proposition. So you should be able to put yourself in the shoes of the opponent. And you must therefore not be one track or look at horse like a blinkers. Don't run like a horse who has got those blinkers on him and doesn't see left or right. You should anticipate what the other side is going to argue. And you can only do that if you know your facts very well. At the back of your palm, you should know your facts. So once you know the facts, you will be able to make a sequence of which is the point that you must first urge, which is the point you should next urge, and so on and so forth, and which is the last point. And you should know how to cover your tracks, because you will then understand what is the weak part of your case and how will you cover it up in the course of then the law will follow. the law will follow. We all know what is the definition of consideration in Section 2D of the Contract Act. And we all know what is the definition of murder in the Indian Penal Code. But why is it that we are able to produce only one Mr. Great Palkiwala and one Mr. Great Jethmalani? They read the same judgment, they read the same law as you and I do. They didn't go to a different law school and read a different contract act. They read the same contract act as you and I did in Section 2D. But why are they considered to be giants in their own way? Because when they looked at the law, they looked at the law each time differently, having regard to the facts that they had mastered. And I think that is the key for preparing in any case that you have to. So you know your facts well, then read the bare text of the law and apply, and always look at what the other side can potentially say. Don't fall into the trap, and then don't say in court, oh my God, I did not think of this point, how the other side came up with this point. If that happens to you, then you are bound to falter and stumble.
So speaking of stalwarts like Mr. Palkiwala and Mr. Jethmalani, so can you tell us about some lawyers that have greatly influenced you? And because I'm at some point of time, I believe we all where we are. We'd like to believe that because when I came to the High Court for the first time, I was in shock and awe of so many people, sir. And were there some senior counsels that really influenced you, whose style was, something that you're really inspired by?
I think I would be doing a disservice if I were to shortlist a few, but all of them, many of them have contributed. And I'm still a student and I still learn a lot from them. There have been senior counsels who have taught me how to read judgments. And mind you, till I was told so, I thought, oh, so what's so great about reading a judgment? And you will believe me, if you were to read, many times people in a haste or hurry cite judgments without realizing that the conclusion sometimes is the opposite of what you're trying to say. And the facts again may be different. So you should know how to read the judgment, analyze the facts very clearly, then apply the ratio to the facts of that given case to the facts of your case. And that's an art of reading a judgment. I have seen many people committing harakiri by saying, I'm citing this judgment without realizing that the conclusion is just the opposite. Classic case is Ramana Shetty's judgment of the Supreme Court in 79. It's one of the most cited cases in every tender matter. But after the principles of law were laid down by Justice Bhagwati, the conclusion there was that since third-party rights have been created, it's been 1 year since the contract given to the other side has been enforced. Now, at this stage, to roll the clock back and to restitute the successful this bidder, the successful petitioner, into the same position is not possible. So, operation successful, patient dead. But many people will cite Ramana Shetty without realizing that in the facts of their case, the conclusion may hit them very badly. So there are some seniors who have taught me how to use judgments. Judgments are like explosives. If they explode in your hand, you had it. There are some seniors who have taught how to maintain your calm and composure in court. It's not about just shouting. It's not a shouting match. It's not a lung power that matters, that you can shout more than me and I'm not so loud enough. That's hardly any consolation. So there are people who have taught, the seniors who have taught you how to maintain your composure. And let me tell you that judges, by and large, generally, are not fascinated by the pitch of your voice. So therefore, that is something that you learn from many good senior counsels even today. Thirdly, how do you look at a percentage success? It's a very important point which many of us don't remember. Every case is not about winning 100%. It's not that you will win on all the points that you have. It may happen in a given case, it may not happen. but you should know exactly where the shoe is hurting the client. Which is that relief that you can give him, whereby he will be able to survive even if the main relief is not granted. And I think that percentage success is a factor that has to be considered by the counsel, because here you have to take realistic stock. Your client may have a wish list, and that wish list may extend to getting a moon, but is it possible? Is it conceivable? You have to balance you have to perform that balancing act both as an officer of the court and as a spokesman or a representative of your client whose case you're espousing. And I think these are factors which I have learned from many seniors, and some of the names I have mentioned on this talk, but there are many more whom I could just think about, including some of our contemporaries like Mr. Rafiq Dada.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to touch upon my favorite subject now, sir. And this question is very close to me. It's also there in the audience question. So I know it's on other people's mind too. Sir, about books. So you have a fantastic library. And I'm in awe whenever I pass by it. And a lawyer's profession is a reading profession. Yeah, any recommendation of books for the professionals of tomorrow? Then not necessarily maybe technical. I know that there is such a wide variety out there: biographies, autobiographies, legal books. So anything in particular, or anything when you're not working on a matter. So I know you love to read. So I was just wondering whether you could give any book recommendations, and even with respect to people starting out on a new subject, to just generally increase their breadth of their learning.
So as I mentioned to you, that when I would see Ashok Bhai reading on a variety of subjects and variety of books, I think the message was very clear to me that in your spare time, don't read law books. Read anything other than law books. Somebody may want fiction, somebody may want non-fiction. I, for one, would like to read more on biographies and autobiographies, not only of lawyers, but of other great personalities. They could be statesmen, they could be sports personalities. And, that gives you an insight into how people's lives have nurtured them, how they have honed their skills, and in many aspects make them the person that they are. I think each individual person, but I think reading is something which is not the only way in which a lawyer can express himself. There are some who love music, there are some who love theater, there are some who love a sport, there are some who play an instrument, musical instrument. So I think it's all about de-stressing. It's all about, keeping your mind alive and regenerated throughout, because next day you have to be ready for a fresh matter, a fresh onslaught. It's not like you see very often in movies, whether Hollywood or Bollywood, that a lawyer is burning his midnight oil with a pipe in the hand and strolling from one end of the room to the other end of the room. You don't necessarily get thoughts when you're doing that. You could be listening to good music and you can get a great thought which you could put to use on the next day. So I think any form of unclogging the mind and de-stressing is very important, so that your mind always remains afresh.
Thank you, sir. So we're coming to the end of it. So I will ask the question that has also been asked already in the chat box. It's very interesting. First generation lawyer, sir, it's a hot topic. I will not get into the rest of it, but I'm saying because there is a very specific query about someone who says that I'm unable to right now get into a firm, be placed in a firm, or get into a counsel's office. Is there any advice that you'd give to first generation lawyers, or those who come from whose primary study has been, say, not in this case, but in a different case, in a vernacular language, someone who comes in from the district with a rich district court background, etc. So any general pointers And so then we'll move on to the most interesting question ever. And so please do not mind. How do young clients, how are they supposed to handle clients? How are young professionals supposed to handle clients? And I know this will be common to CAs as well as lawyers. Sir.
Okay, let me answer your first question, first generation lawyers. I think this tag or the label, first generation lawyers, is a very short-sighted, narrow concept, first generation lawyers. Let me tell you, when my father said, well, it's a great decision for you to become a lawyer, but remember one thing, maybe the first client will come to you because you're Mr. Nankani's son. The client will not come back to you for the second time if you don't perform. You may be Mr. Nankani's son, but you are not going to retain that client if you don't perform. Ultimately, he is going to engage you for your individual skills and not because you carry a particular family name or you come from an illustrious background. So this entire myth about saying that I am a first generation lawyer is really, is really a negative sentiment, and you should not fall a prey to this negative sentiment. You should be, on the contrary, fortunate that today you have great institutions. We had very few. We also had great institutions. I'm a product of the Government Law College, and I'm proud to be the alumni of that college. But today you have far more greater choices to make. You have the national law schools, you have private institutions, you have moot court competitions which are held regularly, and you have internship formula, concept. In our days, internship was virtually unheard of. I mean, you would just call up somebody and say, my son is doing law. Can he just come to you for a few hours? And you just went there in the office and had chai and biscuit, and that was it. And unless you had your own passion to learn, otherwise there was no such thing. Like today, you have a form where you have interviews for internship, you have a certain written test to be conducted for internship, you're given specified goals and targets to achieve during as an intern, and then you have to go back and report to the college what have you done. So you are in fact very fortunate that you, while you're studying, have a great exposure to the new methods, and then of course you are aided by many mechanical aids and tools, not to talk about the new wave of artificial intelligence which is going to come to your aid and assistance. And it's a separate topic that we can't today have it, but I'm a firm believer of the greatness of human mind, that whatever happens, the human mind always will remain ahead of the curve and will remain ingenious. Remember one thing, it's the man who has made artificial intelligence and not the other way around. So I'm a firm believer of that, and I'm optimistic about the future. So I think please don't overburden yourself by saying you're a first generation lawyer. You are a lawyer and you must aspire to be a good lawyer. That is the bottom line. Coming now to the second question, which I think you said, how do you retain clients? And
so the actual question is, how do you handle clients? So it's a whole process after someone comes to you.
Right.
We will not get into the fees part, of course, that's controversial and it's client based, but the skills, because a lot of people, if someone just starting out, a client comes to him, and a lot of times people don't have no idea how exactly to handle them. Some clients tend to be anxious. Some clients tend to, be overly liberal. So there are all sorts, because obviously litigants are all sorts. Yeah, are there anything that we should be keeping in mind for, say, preparing when a client comes first, like reading a brief first, etc., to later on preparing for the brief, etc.?
I want to ask a counter question to the person who has posed this. Have you ever asked yourself how to handle my father, my mother, my siblings, my spouse, my other relationships? So they are part of the society. Clients are no exception. Clients are not somewhere from Mars and they land up without being part of the society. They are equally well part of the society. And how do you maintain relationships? The same way as you maintain other relationships. If other relationships break down, so can a client relation break down. But those are unfortunate situations. And there, we need not get into the causes of those breakdowns, but they are unfortunate. Now, undoubtedly, the client comes with a lot of expectation. But the same happens to a patient and a doctor relationship. The same happens to an architect and the person who's building a house. You will give him a wish list that I want everything in this house. And that has to be catering to my dreams and my perfect idea of a good house. But there is always the same question which will be asked: how do I meet all the aspirations? I think instead of bothering yourself about how do I retain a client, again, look at yourself and look at your performance and say, I will do my best. Before every client meeting, you should try and, if you can, take the brief in advance, at least the bare facts from the client. Say, please email me the note. It may be on a confidential basis, it may be on a no-name basis, but at least he will formulate the proposition for you and you'll have some chance of going through it. At least you'll have a very basic idea of what the problem is about. Prepare yourself, do your homework, and go well prepared when you're talking to the client. And I think honesty is the best policy. You got to be honest. Don't lead the client up the garden path. That is where your reputation will get marred if you do not be honest to the client. You may get away once, you may get away twice, but you can't get away all the time. You can fool some people sometime, but you can't fool all people at all times. That's what Kennedy said. So to a client also, what really is the foundation or the bedrock of relationship is honesty. You must tell your client what you think about the case, what the chances of success are. Don't be music to the ears of the client. Just don't say every time, Haji, 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 you will win, we'll do this, we will destroy the other side, and we have a cast iron case, I can beat my chest, I can thump the table. Be realistic. If the client has a good case, tell him so. If the client has a bad case, please tell him so. You have to temper down the expectations at the beginning of the relationship. Otherwise, the relationship is going to be sour.
Thank you, sir. We have already taken a lot of the time. So just the last question, because it is an offshoot of something that has been asked. Suppose, because this question, you do not get placed in a law firm, a big firm, or someone of your of your personal life, or you cannot get into senior chambers because juniors stay for a long time and the turnover is extremely slow. Vacancy spaces are at a premium. So is there, according to you, some sort of time frame to which some some law student or some CA should train under someone else? Like CAs, of course, have the advantage of articleships, which lawyers don't have. But if a lawyer goes, how long should he or she aspire to work with another lawyer and learn the tricks and office management as well as working on a brief? Or is there any sort of period for which there should be compulsory training for lawyers on their own, accord, or should he or she, based on opportunities, try to go out on their own if nothing else is working out and try to develop their own practice?
Again, as I said, it's about keeping yourself busy. And when I said keeping yourself busy, it's not about the end result being that you should earn money. How you keep yourself busy, how you make yourself relevant, it depends on you. If you don't get into a big law firm, think for yourself that it is their loss, not your loss. Right? Be confident of yourself. If you don't get into a seniors chamber, say fine. That doesn't mean that this is the end of the road. There are many more avenues of learning. I remember, I don't want to name the gentleman concerned, in the first part of his career, he had such a abysmal practice that he would simply go and sit in courts and listen to arguments because he had so much time at hand. As years went by and passed by, and then finally he got an opportunity to work with a good senior, that person then went on to become the most successful lawyer in Bombay High Court. There have been tales and stories about people who have started off as an article clerk and gone on to become the Chief Justice of India. Salute to those personalities. I mean, they are our beacons today whom we can look up and say that there is always a hope. So even if you don't get into a big law firm, if you don't get into a seniors chamber, you could still be an eklavya who just is dedicated himself to mastering what he's best at. That's it.
So on that note, and all the questions are also over, sir. We've covered them very comprehensively. Thank you so much for taking out your time today evening. We all go back much richer and I'm sure much more confident because of this conversation. So you are very busy, very normally. So this time that you have taken out for us, it really means a lot to us. Now, if I may call upon Ms. Nishta Gada, so she is a part of GLC, which also happens to be your alma mater, to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Aditya.
May I say something? Hello.
Yes, sir, Vijay, sir, please go ahead.
Before the vote of thanks, I would like to give one or two points from my side with the permission of our great speaker, Vikram sir. You mentioned in the beginning that you were keen during your college period of All India Radio or stage line and all those things. Let me share with you that I am witness to that. If you recollect, I was 2 years junior to you in Jai Hind College, where you had performed that hosting of one stage drama of that character called Achyut, where Prakash Vaswani was the key player. But apart from there, you were Sutradhar in that particular. I still distinctly remember wearing that white kurta and blue jeans, which was your hallmark. And you know, we were all astonished. And if you recollect, exactly, Aditya, I would share with you, Aditya, Niyati, and all. Exactly 40 years before we happened to meet on the same day, 20th August. Today we are on 19th August 23. 20th August 83, we celebrated Hindi Parishad program in Jai Hind College. And on my suggestion, myself and Sanjay Agarwal came to meet you and invite you to host our show, and you happily accepted it. For that, I'm thanking you today. And I'm glad and I'm astonished that 360 degrees, I'm witnessing that in 1983 when I saw you, today I'm seeing you in this. Of course, all these years I've been reading your articles, attending your various lectures. So that is a delightful moment. But today it came as a pleasant surprise when last week we were discussing. So that time only I said, Niyati, give me 2 minutes. I will join Vikram sir way back to 1983 when I witnessed you as host. And when if you remember, I was in charge of music section. That was the first time Jai Hind was having in-house music. I was playing keyboard. Pritam Motwani was on tumba. Sanjay Agarwal was the secretary of that Hindi Parishad. So these names, if you can recollect, and that was a part of it. So once again, I thank you, Vikram sir, to be part of your team that time and now also.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you for taking me down the memory lane. Really, those were the beautiful moments that
Absolutely.
I had in college. Thank you.
Over to you, Nishta.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Vijay, sir. On behalf of everyone gathered here, I'd like to extend our heartfelt thanks to Vikram, sir, for your generosity in sharing your experiences with us. Listening to your story has provided valuable insights, lessons, and perspectives that I'm sure that we can all carry forward in our own paths. Your journey is a testament to hard work, determination, and a relentless pursuit of excellence. Thank you for being an inspiration to all of us. After today, I am sure that your words will undoubtedly stay with us, guiding us as we navigate our own paths and strive for our own goals. Thank you so much. Additionally, I'd also like to thank Aditya sir for helping us moderate today's session. You not only seamlessly steered the conversation, but you also created an environment that fostered the exchange of knowledge. Thank you so much for ensuring that every question was addressed. And finally, on behalf of the Chamber of Tax Consultants, I'd like to thank the audience for making this session a success. We conduct a lot of events similar to this one, so I hope to see you all there. Once again, thank you so much, Vikram sir and Aditya sir, and we hope to have the privilege of hosting you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.